It's the 14th. And we're going to do government and security. And I'm filling in for Krista because she's up to things.
Did we learn what?
I don't know if we did.
Well, there's nothing we can do about that. And there's probably nothing we can do about this. As we have learned so recently, the government has learned that spying, that takes resources. You have to spend a lot of money on that. You can spend comparatively less money, amazingly, just buying the data because all the corporations are already spying on us. Hey.
ICE, that's Immigrations and Customs, searched LexisNexis over 1 million times in just 7 months. But you don't understand. LexisNexis started life as a legal database, but LexisNexis has purchased millions of records, hundreds of millions of records from commercial databases. So things like your bill payment history are in LexisNexis, and they can prepare a report for that. So this is a fairly detailed article that talks about the number of requests, and there were also a couple 100,000 detailed reports. One individual did 26,000 searches in a month, which is, how do you do that? That's like 1,000 searches a day.
And because it is a service, there's no oversight there. You don't need any reason to search somebody on LexisNexis. You just do whatever you want.
You don't need a warrant. You can just be like, hey, let's cause trouble for this guy that does my yard.
And apparently LexisNexis is so good that in those searches, it can pick up the people around you as well, like your neighbors even.
Yeah. Because the database has your geolocation stuff if that leaked. And it's like, hey, this person is near you a lot. They must live nearby.
And probably one of the big reasons for them to go to the buy it instead of spy on it mentality is because of the bureaucracy. It actually is very hard to violate someone's Fourth Amendment rights. That's kind of how it was designed, right?
Well,
the bureaucracy sometimes protects us, although not often, as we've just seen, but other ways it just slows us down.
The Pentagon's new AI and data chief says, let me just say honestly that the bureaucracy is real.
Although, I mean, if this is like facial recognition and that kind of stuff, it might be good, right?
You dig into this article, and it's not really that the bureaucracy is real. It's that if the government wants to have this, it's going to come from Raytheon or General Electric or one of the incumbents. It's really hard for the bureaucracy to accept new contractors. I mean, Clearview's working real hard to get in there, and the bureaucracy is real there, but there's not really as much of a bureaucracy on the Fourth Amendment side as there is just on the procedural procurement side.
So it got pointed out that he's been in the job for ever how long. He still doesn't have a security card. He still goes through the visitor entrance when it comes to work, because that's just obviously how that works. Just that who's going to get that done? I don't know. And you might think that it's such a dysfunctional group probably shouldn't be in charge of even more things, but not only are they getting more and more in charge of things, they want to reach outside the borders as usual.
The U.S. Department of Justice calls for more international cooperation and enforcement on crypto law enforcement. So it's anti-money laundering. It's tracking, Germany, the United Kingdom, several other EU states are interested in this kind of thing. So of course they're going to cooperate and leave it to the Department of Justice to say, here is the framework that we are going to use for cooperation. This is what you need to be doing. Okay.
And in fact, they are looking very closely at the cryptocurrency world. They might feel that it's a bit of a threat to them, and they really don't like it when people do things outside of their view.
The SEC is investigating Binance's BNB token, according to this report. So, this is a security token, but not really. We covered this, when the first time we covered this, didn't we basically refer to this as a glorified timeshare?
Yeah. They did some weird things with it that weren't pure crypto. And so the SEC is saying, hey, this looks like a security to us. Looks like you're selling stocks.
The SEC's been doing that a lot lately. You think maybe that's to draw attention away from other things they've got going on? Because they didn't care for a few years.
Well, they care when the wrong people do it. Again, when it's outside of their control, they care. When it's done there on their market system, totally cool. And solar panels, boy, with the big heat wave that's coming up and, the grid issues, seems like a good idea to blanket as much of the earth as we can in solar panels, because that's basically the only energy that's still legal, right?
Yeah.
So there's a problem with that because of China.
Biden orders emergency steps to boost U.S. solar production. It turns out we don't make a lot of the ingredients that go into solar panels here because it's really pretty bad for the environment. It's made in China.
What? You can't say that. This is clean energy. So they're talking about removing the tariff, but the reason we have the tariff in the first place is because a lot of people were afraid that China would dump a bunch of garbage solar panels into the United States to get rid of them.
Which kind of was happening.
So now we're going to go back to that, I guess.
Yeah. Seems like this would be a good entrepreneurial opportunity, but then you don't have any opportunity to actually generate that industry in America because a lot of the underpinning that you would need to produce solar panels isn't there because of other regulations.
Yeah, you would be buried in regulatory red tape and that to pay those workers and to find those workers. How are you going to do that?
Can we just annex Mexico and make that the no environment zone and just do all the production down there?
I don't think that's. I don't think that would go over very well.
Was that out loud? Sorry. I get that feeling reading some of this sometimes. It's like these politicians are like, we could just do this in another country. Why don't we, oh, right.
Let's do it to Canada.
No, Canada's too pretty.
Yeah, it'll take us forever to destroy that.
That was one of the funny things in the Pentaveret Mike Myers movies. Like when they got out of Canada, they changed all the filters on the cameras, and then the characters commented on that. They were like, that's weird. Because, Mexico is always brown in movies.
And another industry that seems to be pretty good at avoiding the regulatory loopholes or carving new ones whenever they need to might be losing some of their luster because maybe finally...
Senate antitrust vote likely to pass legislation targeting Apple and other tech giants. Man, I was reading this and the only thing I could think about was the other story in business where Apple is going to get into personal finance and a whole bunch of other things. And oh boy, that does look pretty insane.
Yeah. Yeah, Apple in charge of the money. Of course, that's been coming for a long time. Apple was smart enough to ease it in, whereas Zuckerberg just tried to go in all at once and got smacked down.
That's not how that works.
He was a noob. He didn't know how it works. He didn't understand lobbying yet.
A lot of the senators and stuff, though, are saying that tech controls too much of our stuff and blah, blah, blah. And, everything is on fire and it's all technology's fault. And I found a lot of their arguments disingenuous, but it probably does need attention.
But there is an addiction here, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, fighting addiction in that way doesn't work, as we have so much. The drug war has taught us that. But, is antitrust? I don't know. Maybe if antitrust knocks them down and lets a bunch of smaller companies pop up, maybe that's good, the competition.
I don't know. There's so much other stuff that's it's like we're already 3/4 of the way in regulatory capture, and now we're speaking about antitrust. It's like we should have been doing not regulatory capture for the last 10 years if now we're going to talk about antitrust. It really just seems like a cudgel used to try to get what politicians want out of tech companies.
And there's an election coming. Looks really good before the election. Well, I can't imagine what the Supreme Court is thinking here because when I'm thinking about whose opinion I would ask on technology, I'm imagining that list. Could you think of very many people you would put below this man?
No. At first it's like, well, is this an opinion on technology? And then you dig into it and it's like, well, it's not really what they're asking for.
But there's zero chance that he understands encryption.
There's zero chance that he understands the nuance here. The Reuters reports the U.S. Supreme Court seeks Biden views on WhatsApp Pegasus spyware dispute. So the WhatsApp part of the headline here is a little bit of a red herring. I'm not sure that the Reuters people even understood what they were writing about, but to recap,
there's a lot of that.
Yeah,
more and more.
To recap, what would you do the 60-second summary in the Pegasus stuff that we've covered? Pegasus mainly targets Apple devices, but there is an Android version.
Well, Pegasus claims that it's only used for bad people. But we have seen overwhelming evidence that even if they only sell it in that way, it's not contained.
Yeah. So
it gets to activists, reporters, exactly who you would expect to protect from this kind of thing.
Historically, it has been borderline undetectable malware on an iPhone that will survive resets and reinstalls. And Apple, in my opinion, is not doing enough to really deal with it. But in this case, U.S. citizens were targeted by foreign governments. So the question before the Supreme Court is, does that make the NSO group, the people that are responsible for Pegasus, liable? Like, that's the opinion they want from the Biden administration, because it's like, well, technically that's outside of U.S. jurisdiction, but the phones that are infected are on U.S. soil possessed by U.S. citizens. How do we address that in law?
I guarantee you, I don't know this for a fact, but I'd be willing to bet any sum of money on it. I would bet that U.S. foreign aid went into NSO R&D.
Absolutely 100%. I would totally agree with that. That is very, very likely.
But you just cannot talk about that.
It's another USS Liberty incident.
Which is the anniversary. This last week was the anniversary. Happy anniversary. All you dead sailors. You should Google that.
And we're not going to talk about that because that's a thing.
And I must admit that this was already going on, but now the expansion, the timing is a little suspicious.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, public enemy number one these days is Elon Musk.
Federal Safety Agency expands its investigation of Tesla's autopilot system. This definitely has nothing to do with Elon Musk declaring war on politicians.
Now, this was all about the biggest part of this is that those Teslas just could not stop ramming into emergency vehicles because, and we talked about this before when these things happen, but police and ambulance and stuff are trained to park a little bit in the road to block that right lane when there's something broken down or there's an accident or something on the shoulder or maybe partially in the lane itself.
And an angle so that you'll glance off of them away from them.
So because they want you to get out of that lane and not risk debris or hitting somebody who's over there or anything like that. Teslas just they can't seem to understand this concept.
They don't comprehend.
They plow right into them.
Yeah.
So that's what they're looking into.
Although people are supposed to be driving, but then they use terms like it's autopilot. And it's like,
or full self-driving.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the argument. China, have you been following the Belt and Road?
Yeah.
China has a secret military base, maybe several, all across the path down through the South China Sea and out that strait.
Yeah.
They're controlling that whole, like they're building a ring fence around Taiwan. And
has anybody noticed that?
they're doing it by giving these countries really crazy loans and that they know they can't pay back. And then they're like, oh, you can't pay your loan? Guess we'll take that port. Just give us that port. It's not going to be a military base. And then they won't let the regulators in anymore.
Yeah.
So they got a big plan going on with this Belt and Road thing. And that's not the only thing they're doing. They're also looking at the internet.
China has rebranded its proposal on internet governance targeting developing countries. So this is actually really genius. What do you do when, let's call it the West, but it's really Europe and the West now at this point. What do you do when your telecom companies were producing telecom equipment that's video surveillance equipment, internet routing equipment, that kind of thing? You're basically caught with your hand in the till producing dangerously insecure equipment that can't be explained by simple incompetence. It's just there's so many security holes that it almost seems deliberate. And like you found some security holes. Those are the ones that were there for you to find. But what if there were some really skilled security holes there as well? So that suppresses the market for other legitimate competition, blah, blah, blah. You play the long game. What do you do if you do that on a whole internet protocol level? That's IPv6+, which sounds like it would be compatible with IPv6, but it's not. This is a whole other rabbit hole of insanity that may actually warrant a separate video because IPv6+ is not a great idea.
Unless you're China.
Yeah, or unless you want Huawei equipment to service IPv6+.
But if you are a low-income country and you're looking to expand your internet and China's throwing bags of money at you, maybe it does look pretty good. Although there is a little bit of hope here that a lot of the leaders who were, had quotes in this article were very suspicious, as they should be.
This seems like it's too good of a deal to be true. Well,
because China's going to have a 99-year lease on your infrastructure, your internet infrastructure. The Great Wall will expand. And Taiwan is the big thing at stake here, right? Just like Ukraine is the prize in the north.
for food production.
Taiwan is the prize in that ocean. And that's because they're now the powerhouse of technology. So China is looking at Russia and they're like, ooh, look at those sanctions. That would be bad for us. So you have to plan in advance. What would we do if the U.S. sanctioned us in a similar way?
Then China must seize TSMC if the U.S. were to impose sanctions. That's the headline going around. When you unpack it, the Economist also said, but it would be really hard to get it without destroying it.
And we have introduced kind of like the Samson plan to Taiwan. We're like, hey, if you want to be a partner of us, we kind of need you to agree to burn all this down should the CCP show up on your shores.
It's really interesting because if China does this, it almost has to be a hearts and minds thing. Like the people have to want it. The people might be mistaken for wanting it, but the people would have to want it in order for China to succeed. There is not a military solution here for either side.
I imagine you could probably get people in place,
Over time.
take it over,
Yeah, like Hong Kong.
protect it. No, well, yeah, but like Taiwan's going to be a little bit harder. But you need people on the inside who seize those factories and then defend them until the main force can get there.
That really did not work out well for Chernobyl or the other nuclear plant.
Well, maybe we could assume that China's more efficient than Russia. Plus, they got all those new military bases, secret military bases, right?
That are along the Belt and Road.
Quick response. They got the South China Sea Islands, which were not militarized in any way.
Those are getting bigger.
Yeah, they got that amazing, like they just dredge down and spray the sand up.
It turns out the thing that they needed was air garbage. They just needed piles and piles of American garbage, and they could build the.
Sure, that's good for the sea life. But you talk about hearts and minds, and one way, if you are a despotic government, you're never going to get their hearts, right? But you might get their greed.
China offends. China offers citizens cash and spiritual rewards, quote unquote, for spying tip-offs. The state security ministry, man, if that takes off like it does here, you're going to have an army of Karens that are reporting people for things like jaywalking, and they'll be overwhelmed with nonsense.
Yes, because people cannot wait to get on the phone with those cops. That's an astonishing personality trait. I can't get my head around it. But it's 12,000 RMB, which was how much?
Not a lot.
But I mean, in China, with a lot of people have very low income. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was 100,000 yuan. I don't know how to pronounce that. I think that's $12,000. People would definitely screw you for 12. People make up stuff for $12,000.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's like, I don't like him. Let's plant some evidence in his car. It's like.
And the EU has made a very, very bold decision.
The EU, some EU lawmakers have endorsed a ban on combustion engine cars by 2035. It's going to be really bad when we discover that special brand of cyanobacteria that produces diesel-like fuel, and it's like, hey, it's green internal combustion. Too late. Oh,
Yeah, in fact, this agreement expressly forbids any sort of liquid chemical fuel.
yeah.
So it's impossible to make that amazing fuel.
I really wish that they would get that in there, because if we had algae that produced diesel, that would be incredible, because internal combustion engines are nice.
They are so convenient. But they're evil.
I wonder if we could turn it into electricity somehow, have some kind of liquid. I mean, if you take apart like lithium AA batteries, the stuff in there is liquid. Like the long life lithium AA's.
I don't think you can put it in your engine.
No, not in that form.
And the EU is working on another Russian ban. Wow, this seems a little bit late, right? But I guess better late than never.
The EU is working on a possible ban on providing cloud services to Russia, according to source. This is Reuters. So you have to know where your customer is. They can't just show up with a credit card and a bank account. It's like, are you using this in Russia? No? Yes? Okay.
It's important to note that the EU doesn't, I mean, they've got some presence there, but they don't really have a lot of cloud hosting companies. So basically they're saying, hey, you American companies need to stop doing this.
Well, I mean, Microsoft is pulling out.
Google already did, right?
Yeah. That's going to be in the business section.
They'll have to use Rumble. And the old EU charger thing, we talked about this last week, but now I think it is official, right?
It is, yeah. The EU has agreed to make a common charger mandatory for Apple iPhones and other devices. Basically everything. USB-C.
Which it is terrible what Apple did. But at the same time, this also is that same, like the liquid fuel thing. You can't make anything better.
This is also a paywall alternative. And in the story that you had in the story list, they had the USB-C cable and the Apple Lightning cable together. And the picture of the Apple Lightning cable had the one pin that's burnt. Everybody's got the Lightning cable that has the one pin that's just black, because Apple engineers, the idealists that they are. Oh, yeah, there you go. The UK is not going to follow. Yeah. UK will not copy EU demand for common charging cable. I thought this was... Anyway, look at that. Look at the burned pin. Look at it. It's so burned. Everybody has this cable. Look, this is all you need to know about Apple engineering in a nutshell. They did the math, and that was as big as it needed to be for the charging rate that they wanted. But they didn't take into account pocket lint and aging, because they never do, because it's Apple. They don't do any real world practical engineering. It's only ideals. And it's your fault that the cable's dirty.
I think the UK here is just, they love to be different than the EU now. Like, no, we're not doing that. Although, the innovation thing, I think, like, what if we come up with a better cable than USB-C? And then you're going to have to move at the speed of EU bureaucracy to update your phone.
I would be okay with an exception for, like, magnetic cables, where it's just a pogo pins and, the cable just snaps in place. That'd be fine. And there's already an exception for wireless charging. So if your thing can charge wirelessly, meh.
Well, Saudi Arabia, some very interesting stuff going on there. It turns out, much like Japan, they have a big problem with replacement rate breeding and an aging population. What do you do if you're in that situation, but you have nearly unlimited budget?
Saudi Arabia plans to spend $1 billion a year discovering treatments to slow aging. We've got some other stories that say that they should probably just fund these other people that have already figured that out.
They're looking at metformin, which is a diabetes drug that I think they've had some very impressive stuff in mice with that. But if you do this and you're successful, sounds great, right? But you go from a nice, pleasant society where everybody is getting old and dying to resource wars almost immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't carry that many people. It just ain't going to happen, at least not that quickly.
Now, Elon Musk says the carrying capacity for Earth is nowhere near the ceiling.
Elon Musk also praises the Chinese Communist Party for their thoughts on work and 996. Elon Musk wants slaves. The saga of Google and RCS in India has a new chapter. They rolled it out. They were so excited about it. And Indian businesses who cared nothing about the rules immediately took advantage of it. So much so,
Google has disabled RCS ads in India following rampant spam by businesses. We reported on this last week. It was like, guess you can't turn it off. And the Google's like, okay, we'll turn it off on our side.
How quickly something gets ruined by advertising.
This was almost a nothing burger.
Yeah, but we got to see another terrible splash page, and I thought that Krista could comment on it, but of course she's abandoned us.
FBI seizes a notorious marketplace for selling millions of stolen SSNs. It was SSN DOB market. But the other 800 places you can download that zip file still exist.
A lot of places you get it for free.
A carefully worded Google search will get it to you for free.
Of course, we all hate notifications on our websites. And it's funny because TechCrunch has a little one at the bottom on this page. Oh, et tu, TechCrunch.
Chrome will now silence many of those annoying notification permission prompts on the web. So the only one I've ever allowed is from Discourse, like on the forums that I hang out, because Discourse has that. But like all these news sites where it's like, oh, TechCrunch would like to send you updates. No.
Or know your location.
Yeah, I have enough problem with the Epic Games Launcher. It's like, I'm going to turn that off. And then I install Epic Games Launcher on another computer. And then the computer that I turn that off on, it turns it back on. And so it's just like, and so then I come in and there's a stack of like 7 Epic Games Launcher things on like a computer I use for benchmarking. And it's like, thanks, Epic Games Launcher. And that's not even the thing we're talking about. It's just everybody wants to pop up with nonsense.
Yeah. And it's going to use machine learning. And it says the machine learning is going to try to figure out whether or not you like those things.
It'll just block everything.
What person ever loves those?
Yeah, no one.
How desperate do you have to be for interaction?
The click-through rate on those is slightly higher than the email pop-up. That's like, well, you want to sign up for our newsletter? That pops up after you've been reading the article for 30 seconds.
Which, if you can apply machine learning to that, that's what you need to get rid of. And Google has another tool similar to their map tool. However, this one is not all about showing you, directions or anything like that. We are observing what is on the surface of the planet on any given tiny pixel.
Google tool shows what's on the surface of the Earth in real time. So this is movement. They're basically, the satellites aren't numerous enough and fast enough now. We can just point them at Earth and take pictures and see what changes in a given day. So that's New York.
That's going to be, red indicates built land, like a structure, whereas the pockets of green are the parks and such. Do you think this would actually be fast enough in real time to represent what happened in a nuclear strike?
Yes. Probably also, it's fast enough to watch what's happening in Ukraine because there's map updates with that kind of stuff. And it's fascinating. And like the aircraft transponders and the vehicle transponders and all of that's just on the internet.
Well, one of the, if you're a traveler, or even if you're not, I guess, one of the scariest kinds of malware and infection is the kind that comes through your charging cable, because you don't know what to think about it. You might be in a mall or a bus station or something like that, and you're like, oh, a charging station. You plug it in, bad move, bad idea. And now that Apple, I guess, is forced to use USB-C, they're going to do something about it.
macOS will soon block unknown USB accessories by default. So we've got more stories about this kind of thing coming up in business, but there was an Apple event last week. And there's a lot of stuff, but the new version of macOS is going to block untrusted USB-C devices by default. When you plug in USB-C something, it's going to pop up and ask you, it's like, hey, should we trust this thing?
Well, I hate the shortenings, but fintech. Oh, fintech is hot right now. Everybody wants to be a part of it. And if you're one of those people, but you don't really know much about it, you might even not know what that word means. But you're like, man, I got to be a part of this. Here's a little pro tip. That API key, protect it. Protect it with your life. Because if somebody else has it, it's the same as being you.
Investor sues the Winklevoss twins' troubled crypto business over security failures. IRA Financial Trust blames Gemini for the theft of $36 million in crypto. What happened? They lost their API key.
And once that was gone, so was all their crypto.
The Winklevoss twins you may remember from such adventures as the founding of Facebook.
And getting insanely rich on the rise of Bitcoin.
It's not doing as well now, but it's still insanely doing well compared to when they got in at around $100 a coin.
Some of that might be lost to this lawsuit. Although, I don't know. That guy doesn't have much of a case, right? I mean, API key, if you lose your API key, that's on you.
Yeah.
That's like taking your car keys and just throwing them out in the street.
Or taking a picture of them, putting them on YouTube. Just like, here's my car.
And another week. So, of course, what do we have? That's right. Another almost said another city shut down by a cyber attack.
Italian city of Palermo shuts down all systems to fend off cyber attack. So they were doing recon. They were starting to infect systems. And it's like, okay, the way that we can deal with this is just turn everything off until we can clean it up. So they did. And that seems to have worked.
Some lovely old buildings in this city.
It's the 5th largest city in Italy.
Yikes.
They get about 2.3 million visitors a year, I think, something like that.
We see these headlines over and over. Every company has, well, not every company, but a lot of companies have made this announcement before. I think Microsoft was the last one. None of it's really caught on, but Apple could have the clout to make this ubiquitous.
Apple passkeys could finally kill off the password for good. Basically, you use your phone and a QR code to log into a website. Just what the NSO group wants.
Yeah. Everything is on the phone, so presumably there's another factor there that
the
proves
ultimate
it's you.
Trust. But trust Apple and our phone is very secure.
The idea is we get away from data leaks because your data is not necessarily, or nothing useful is actually on the website. The website just knows to communicate back with your phone and authenticate that way. But then the phone becomes the weak link. And you can lose those.
Or someone can pwn it from halfway around the globe.
Or SIM swap it.
Yeah.
Or supply chain attack it because you installed Cookie Clicker. I don't actually know that Cookie Clickers are anything's wrong with it. It might be fine. Here's a headline. It's like, yeah, did Captain Obvious write this one? Raphael Satter. Is this shocking?
Ukrainian officials' phones targeted by hackers, according to a cyber watchdog. Yeah, that Pegasus software, about 5 different people have been trying to Pegasus Ukrainian officials' phones.
Wonder who could be responsible. Actually, it's probably as much the United States as it is Russia. That's the thing. Because there is a story that Ukraine is not providing enough feedback back to Washington, and Washington doesn't like it. Call back to the USS Liberty incident. You know why the USS Liberty was there? It was to spy. They didn't like that. Telegram is one of those services where you might use it instead of all the other horribly insecure things, and you might think you're safe, but you shouldn't think that.
Telegram reportedly surrendered user data to authorities despite insisting 0 bytes had ever been shared. It was a number substantially greater than 0. And we reported this on the Level 1 news first, because remember when this came out, and we're like, no, they definitely shared info.
Germany, well, we presumed this first, maybe. But Germany, this had to do with like child predator type stuff and terror cases. Apparently, when those two things came up, Telegram was like, yep, here you go. Look at whatever you want. Signal might still be okay.
Maybe.
And Microsoft has another big flaw, and this one they are not rushing to deal with.
An actively exploited Microsoft zero-day flaw still has no patch. This is the one we reported on from last week. Still dangerous. There are mitigating things you should do. You should definitely read the article to do that, especially if you work in small business, small office type situations. But yeah, it's not a great situation.
Often, security researchers come up with novel things that are used to spy that may never actually make it into the real spying world. There was the light bulb spying thing. You think anybody's actually used that at this point?
Probably it's been used in like 5 operations worldwide.
It doesn't work super great. You need a really, really perfect situation. In this case, even temperature can mess with it.
Yeah.
But it is terrifying.
Bluetooth signals can be used to identify and track smartphones. This is substantially more low-tech. In fact, a lot of retailers in malls, back before malls were declining sharply, precipitously, had kiosks in them that were tracking the Bluetooth signals. And when you went to checkout, it would try to correlate a Bluetooth MAC address, which is globally unique, with your purchase identity. This is so bad. The Wi-Fi MAC address and the Bluetooth MAC address. This is so bad for, I think, the last 3 or 4 versions of macOS. It tries to randomize the MAC address, the media access control address, in the iOS software to try to thwart this type of spying because it is so pervasive.
But in this case, the MAC address is not even required. There is noise on the Bluetooth chip that is actually unique to the chip. But that is the thing that changes with temperature.
Yep.
So maybe when you start like you come into the mall at first, you put your phone in your pocket and warm it up. But then halfway through your mall trip, you get a cold drink, hold that against the phone. Change your Bluetooth signature. Just don't go to malls.
It's bad.
And here's a terrifying headline because in the UK, the National Health Service is getting into the school systems somehow. And they're like, hey, we need to do something. We need to do things for the kids. What can we do? What can we introduce to the school system to make it safer and better for the kids? And someone unironically said Palantir. Yeah, Palantir.
Palantir gears up to expand its reach into the UK's National Health Service because Palantir definitely needs access to all of the health records of people in the National Health Service in the UK. That definitely makes sense.
You know, the company that's named after a terrible spying tool. I can say that this week because Chris is not here.
Do you think that they would use the biometric data from this to uncover spies?
Or to build onto their other stuff with all the data they rake in from these kids that's illegal?
It's madness.
But it's coming.
All right, what do we got for tomorrow? Business? There's a lot of business stories this week.
Yeah, business and then whatever is not big, which would be social.
June 1 was the quarter rollover, so there's all kinds of business news. All right, we'll see you then.
We don't have anybody say bye in the sing-song voice. Imagine it.
I'll have a drink of cheap coffee. It's June 15th. Time keeps on slipping into the future. But there's nothing we can do. It's crazy that June is already halfway gone.
You have to say it 3 times. Slipping, slipping, slipping.
Slipping into the future. That's the Eagles.
I don't think it is.
Is it? No,
Definitely not.
I haven't maintained my musical knowledge. It's gotten all
Maintained?
fragmented and weird.
Well, we got a bunch of Apple stories. They had a lot to say this week.
Apple rumors point to a 15-inch MacBook Air, 12-inch MacBook, and a 14-inch iPad Pro. This is because Apple had their event, because, hey, end of the quarter, and they're talking about the M2. And, of course, there's nothing concrete, nobody has their hands on anything yet, but, more Apple stuff.
And changes to the mobile.
Apple iOS 16 brings massive improvements to the lock screen and messages. They're still not opening up messages to Androids, so... But you can customize the lock screen very slightly, which why do Apple people get so excited about this? It's like, oh, Apple is giving us the ability to slightly customize our phones more than we used to be able to before. We can individually express ourselves in ways that Apple sanctions.
Well, that's not the only thing they're going to give you. They're going to give you an amazing new way to control games on your iPhone. So you'll be able to play Fortnite better than... Oh, wait.
No.
Oh,
No.
You can't play Fortnite.
iOS 16 supports Nintendo Switch Pro and Joy-Con controllers. Does this mean that Nintendo games are coming to the Apple App Store? Some sort of mad partnership? I think that there was probably a 50% chance that this was almost torpedoed internally, because somebody said, well, then somebody's going to make a 3D printable iPhone adapter that will hold the Joy-Con controllers on the side with an iPhone in the middle, and we don't want the iPhone to be associated with something as cheap and crappy as 3D printed accessories.
And what if they got a NES emulator and ran that?
Which it does work with, which is what's in the article.
Also, those controllers are notoriously bad for drift.
Yeah.
They are terrible. There's got to be a better option.
Nintendo is kind of the Apple of consoles, aren't they?
And Apple is giving more and more virtual machine compatibility, which is an interesting take compared to everything else that they do.
Apple will allow Linux VMs to run Intel apps with Rosetta and macOS Ventura, the next new version that we saw previews of. This is kind of interesting, although Apple hasn't really opened up about being able to run Linux on the M1. They're okay with this. You have to create a shared directory and do some other jiggery pokery, but it will use Apple's translation layer. This also simultaneously opens the door to be able to run ARM macOS on any ARM CPU with 8.2 extensions. There's some minor compatibility issues there, but it could open the way for Hackintoshing.
I predict a lot of people will make videos about this and no one will really use it.
Yes.
Because no one cares.
Well, on Linux, you can just recompile for ARM natively. And it would be better if Apple opened up the thing so you could, have a compiler that compiles properly for their chip. But Apple's being weird about that. So.
And Apple is taking an interesting step considering that whole antitrust thing that's going on. Because this seems like they're really branching out into a whole new industry. And that's like, wait a minute. You're taking on more power? What?
Apple is turning your iPhone into a fintech service, taking on PayPal, Affirm, and more. So this is the one that I was talking about, this story and like the whole thing that Apple's doing here. Imagine, and the CNBC doesn't, they don't have any imagination, because this is, what do we have right now with the App Store? So like you subscribe to the New York Times with the App Store, which is the New York Times newspaper is notoriously difficult to unsubscribe from in their own native formats. But if you have it on Apple, you just turn it off and it's off. Apple doesn't play any games. Nothing happens with that. The demo that Apple showed there just stopped short of doing that for credit cards and all of your bill payments and everything else. So if you sign up for something and you say, no, I'm not going to pay that, it's going to turn off immediately, which is probably good, but that's going to make all those finance companies lose their mind.
Also, they're getting into the pay later thing. But what we're seeing from pay later is those companies are currently getting killed because no one has any money to pay later. They still buy now, but they don't pay later, which is critical. You have to do both.
The idea, I think, was to be like the weekly, like the weekly rental thing, because you buy something or you rent something that costs $100 for $50 a week for 4 weeks, and that's like crazy margins on that kind of thing. I think that's what some of the buy now pay later thing we're hoping is like. You miss a few payments, but then the fees drive you insane, then you get the lockdown and you do stuff. Apple could enforce it. Like if Apple is hooked into your finances and you do the buy now pay later, Apple's going to get their money before your rent or your food or anything else.
But then you're going to switch away from Apple.
Yeah,
people aren't going to tolerate that.
But Goldman Sachs and Apple working together on their credit card. all of this is not good for individuals, ultimately.
Is anything Apple's ever done good for individuals?
It's a slowly boiling thing. It's like, this is so pretty. And it's like, but you're dying on the inside. Your soul is rotting. It's so pretty. Okay.
And AAA gaming on an Apple, it's just not something that's done. No one wants this. Or maybe they do. I don't know. But it's weird that, like the most popular game in the world, Apple won't let you play. But now they want to get into AAA gaming.
Apple's new MetalFX upscaling system will compete with AMD FSR and NVIDIA DLSS, according to Ars Technica. My take on this is doomed to failure and is not going anywhere. Do you know why? Because Apple changes their mind a lot, and then the old things don't work anymore.
Which is exactly what's going to happen here, which is going to have a lot more consequences than when something on your phone stops working or something on your Mac stops working. This is a very, very stupid idea, and people will flock to it.
Yeah. Next generation Apple CarPlay will be a whole car OS. Look at all those screens and distractions.
Oh, it's so good. Plus, you can change the colors. And as you can see, all the telemetry is running through an app here. No real dials or gauges.
It'll be just like my first car with no working gauges on the dash.
Except a lot more expensive.
It's a feature, not a bug, not a horrible mechanical problem, because this car should have been junked about 100,000 miles ago.
And speaking of blurring the lines between features and bugs, it turns out that maybe after we saw that people were creeped out by the idea of having a camera on their glasses, they were even more creeped out by a easier to hide camera on the watch.
Meta has reportedly shelved its watch with a built-in camera, because that's weird. You can't video conference with your watch, like, hello,
Plus,
how's it going?
there was also a skin-facing camera, and they wanted to use that to try to tell things about your physical state.
Probably they figured out that the infrared laser sensors are better for that than a camera.
Or it's creepy and people won't buy it. I think the bodily telemetry, non-invasive bodily telemetry will be the next big,
Yeah.
That'll be the next battle line, the front line of you can't do this. You can't monitor my health.
Actually, once we have a big data set with stuff like that, we're probably going to discover that the causes of things are much more obvious than we thought, which is when we have the data to back it up.
But then it'll also mean that they can immediately decide if you are taking steps to fix that or not.
Oh, you mean that your insurance company will literally use the data to make you uninsurable? It's like, well, you didn't disclose that you had microplastics in your lung. This lung cancer is pre-existing. What?
Not just insurance companies, like mortgage companies. Oh, I'm sorry, a 30-year? I hate to tell you this. But we've been scanning you since you've been sitting here. You ain't going to make it 30. Microsoft angered a lot of people when they came out with Windows 11, and in doing so, eliminated a lot of old hardware that it would run on. And it seems like they are following that same course. They only want their stuff running on the hottest new technology.
Microsoft is trying to kill HDD boot drives by 2023. The push for SSD everything intensifies. You know what? I'm okay with this.
Now, it's not that it's not going to work. It's that they want all the OEMs to agree not to sell Microsoft.
I know a Fortune 500 that's still buying their standard class info drone workstation. Still, they're buying mechanical hard drives, and there is something seriously wrong with them. They're really stupid. Really stupid.
And unions are becoming more and more of a thing. And I think as the economy crumbles, we'll see more of that. It'll be a more popular thing. And especially with the likes of Elon Musk running around saying crazy stuff. So Microsoft is saying, well, we see a trend here. How can we get on their good side?
Microsoft tries collaborating with unions to avoid quote unquote public disputes. This is an interesting approach. Microsoft basically concedes, yeah, okay, making software is basically like a license to print money. How can we all benefit from this?
But if you let them in at this point, they will for sure try to take control, as all the big companies will attempt to do. How long do you think before Amazon accepts the reality and switches to that tactic.
I don't know. Apple is so sociopathic with all, like, they're structured sociopathically, so I don't know that they would ever be willing to accept something like that.
Can anybody get to one of these positions without being a sociopath? I'm not sure they can.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless it's nepotism, and that might be worse. And Microsoft, it seems, is softening on a lot of its stances. Again, I got to think this has to do with the labor market and them sort of reading the tea leaves and being like, yeah, things are going to change and let's try to get in front of it.
Microsoft no longer will ban staff from seeking roles at competitors and plans to disclose salaries on job ads. This is, of course, after giving everybody emergency raises, or so they were telling the press.
Does not apply to upper level management. So if you are high up if you're one of those sociopaths, you do still have to do the non-compete.
Isn't the inflation for last month, didn't the numbers for that just come out and it was like 8%?
It went up 1% in 1 month. 1% more inflation.
That's crazy.
That's a lot.
If it does that every month, that's going to compound by the end of the year and just be even more bananas.
Here's what you compare it with. The Fed's target, 2% per annum. That's 50% of our per annum in 12% or 1/12 of our year.
Ralph, I'm in danger.
My funds are in danger, and then I'm in danger from food riots. And if you were in Russia, you are in danger of losing your Microsoft account.
Microsoft winds down its business in Russia and has laid off more than 400 people. Microsoft is the latest company to sever. Doesn't look like that's going to wind down anytime soon, which is surprising. Maybe it'll be a sudden collapse and everything will go back to.
This is off topic, but it seems like what we're seeing now, all of a sudden, because Ukraine was all of a sudden like, oh yeah, we weren't telling you guys before, but we're dying like flies. So a lot of people are saying, wait a minute, are you going to have to surrender? We were told that you were doing so well. That's the problem with propaganda. But no more Microsoft over there. And pi, it's like, the nerd game. Who can calculate pi to the highest precision? I think Google has a strong lead here.
Google developer Emma Haruka Iwao has calculated pi to 100 trillion digits. Oh yeah, Dr. Cuttress is always working on this kind of thing. Took 158 days to perform the calculation using spare capacity in Google's compute cloud. So
it was really an advertisement for the cloud.
Yeah, it's more storage than compute limited, as it turns out.
The 100 trillionth digit of pi? 0. A fitting digit. If it had been 6, we'd all been sad. We reported on Grubhub, they had this amazing deal, and they didn't really think it through. They said, hey, during this lunchtime on one day in New York City, we're going to give you incredible, incredible discounts just to get you in here, just to show you how good Grubhub is. It was overwhelmingly used, so much so that no restaurant could keep up. They were getting 6,000 orders per minute, some of them. So what happens next?
Grubhub reportedly still owes New York City restaurants thousands of dollars after a disastrous free lunch promo. Plus, a food truck festival rolls into the Marine Park this weekend.
This is paywall alternative.
And more intel.
NewYorkEater.com was not the original news story here. It was on Bloomberg. But so no one came for those orders. The restaurants made them. They had them waiting in some cases. No one came.
Your first experience with Grubhub is like, we're going to get you free food that just never showed up.
So the people got their money back, but the restaurant still threw away a massive amount of food. So Grubhub has said they're going to pay them back. They have not yet done it. And another story that we need Krista for, because Krista, she's the big Blizzard proponent. It's a tough thing to defend, but I don't know if she tries to defend it. She just keeps using it. However, their latest defense is one of the worst ever.
Diablo Immortal now has Blizzard's lowest ever user score on Metacritic. It's the third Blizzard game in as many years to get a user score lower than 1.0. It's almost like they've got all the money and they've no idea how to make a game that people want to play.
Although they've called it a success. Because they don't need most of you to like it. They just need the people with serious addictions to this kind of thing to really like it.
It's like, oh, I don't really want to launch the rocket in Factorio, but I have to launch the rocket in Factorio.
Oh, did you manage to do that yet?
I did, yeah.
Oh, wow. Did you get, how much endorphin did you get from that? Did you get a big hit?
No, it really was much less than I expected.
It's the journey, not the destination.
I managed to launch it with the satellite too, so that was that took a bunch of extra resources.
What did you get for that?
1,000 white science. So the way that you get white science is you keep launching rockets. And so all of that nonsense, you have to build automation for that. And then see, the last time we played Factorio, there was no white science. There wasn't even yellow or purple science. Well, the purple science came from killing the aliens. But yeah, so if you want white science, you have to continually launch rockets. You don't just launch one rocket, you launch a ton of rockets with satellites on board. So you're going to be moving all over the map to get resources because all of everything's depleted.
Well, as much as that exploits certain mental disabilities, it does so for one price, and it does so in a very rewarding fashion.
Yeah,
you can't really argue. I mean, you got some good times out of Factorio.
I actually really enjoyed the nuclear power. I wish we'd done it sooner because once I got the nuclear grid up and running, it was like 81 megawatts. So all of the power problems went away, and it's less pollution.
Now imagine that every time you put a new belt or inserter down, you could pay a nickel to make them better. Oh, we already did that.
We did this one. He's making a comparison to Diablo Immortal. So
yeah. I've not seen any gameplay of it, but it sounds horrible. Also, this is one of the biggest. All the reviewers gave it good scores, which tells you something about the reviewers.
Well, that's why they didn't send us one. We'll happily tell you that it sucks.
And I'll happily tell you that this sucks. I've never used it, don't know anything about it, but I'll tell you it sucks.
Salesforce takes crypto plunge with the new NFT cloud. That's all you need to know. Salesforce, Fortune #1. Woo! Not really, but
I don't know what made them think that they are equipped to do this. But what would you say the over-under is for a massive theft from that cloud service?
I think we'll be reporting on that within a year, probably within 6 months.
Now I'd say lower than a year for sure. Ooh, crypto taking a hit today. Look at that.
Ooh,
poor little Ethereum. And that is, it's something to this story because PayPal has recently gotten into it. And I guess one of the big things about it, one of the big problems with the PayPal service is you couldn't take your crypto out of it. You can only send it to other people.
PayPal lets users transfer Bitcoin and Ethereum to external wallets now, finally, after the long demanded feature let users move crypto to their external wallets and hardware devices. They just had to make sure that they had the ledger in place to automatically send your identity and the place you sent your crypto to the feds. That's all. They had to make sure that was in place, and then everything's okay.
And LexisNexis.
And LexisNexis, yeah.
Now here's a little bit of a, on the edge tech story. It's not inherently tech related, although it kind of is these days. But fintech, as we've said, and of course the game stonks, because the game stonks are probably what led to this. This has to do with payment to order flow, and if you're a Robinhood investor, ooh, I'd get out.
Wall Street's top cop proposes massive changes to the stock market. The massive changes is that selling order flow, that's not okay. Which is what Robinhood does.
Which is like the business model of Robinhood and Citadel.
I like the quote from Robinhood's CEO. He's like, I don't know. I mean, we're fine. Probably. We need to take a look at it when it's released. And it's like, are you fine? Are you really? I don't think so.
It is a good law.
Yeah.
Because high frequency trading preys on that. If that happens and they actually do it right, I don't know if there's loopholes or not. High frequency trading will no longer be able to affect the stock market the way that it does right now.
Also, it's been awesome to watch them do the direct register stock thing, taking all of the stock away from brokerages. That's amazing.
There was another headline, I didn't add it, but a lot of the HFT places are now suddenly getting into crypto because they need a market where they can still get order flow and jump in front and scalp those orders.
Yeah.
Well, Team Executor, they built a very robust switch mod chip, non-invasive, ran on software. It was great. Nintendo, it took them a while, but they got him. And they arrested him, and they had this big case against him. And it seems like Nintendo's lawyers and the judge were sort of like colluding here.
Yeah.
That's not how that system is supposed to operate.
Nintendo wanted hackers' prison sentence to turn heads, so some memos and some other things have leaked that maybe makes it seem like the lawyer and the judge were saying, yeah, we should do this to set an example, but that's not how this is supposed to work. Justice is supposed to be blind. Do you think maybe the judge was invested in Nintendo? This happened with Disney too. It's like, oh, the judge has invested heavily in Disney and he found heavily in Disney's favor. Nintendo is not like, when you, I don't know. Nintendo is not behaving in any way that makes me think that they're appropriate stewards of our collective shared culture. They're in it to make money, and that takes away from the wonder of what they're able to produce in terms of entertainment.
Is it our culture, though? I mean, they did create it.
I mean,
shouldn't we just abandon their culture and create our own?
Yeah.
Isn't that the answer?
I mean, I have to say that I have gotten a lot more, like, as time goes on, the more games that I play, like Dwarf Fortress and blah, blah, blah.
Vampire Survivors.
Yeah, the more...
RimWorld.
Yeah, RimWorld. Yeah, RimWorld is a great example. It's a
Factorio.
It's a relatively uncomplicated mechanic, but it is great storytelling and it's great adventure. It's and it's different. It's very different than and it's somehow there's more human connection there and less manufactured pushing endorphin buttons, which seems like that's better.
Like in comparison to Breath of the Wild, for example. An amazing game.
Yeah,
but it doesn't have that.
Yeah. Can you imagine Breath of the Wild, but the mechanic and the idea of something like Dwarf Fortress or NetHack or...
No, actually, I can't imagine that. That's just too much of a conflict in my head. I must have forgot to put the paywall alternative on here. Business Insider is such an annoying paywall. And there's not really, I don't know a lot of details here. It's just another major merger, which probably is going to be bad for us.
Roku employees are talking about a possible acquisition by Netflix. So this is great because this is a thing that we can point to and we'll have a real concrete prediction. If Netflix acquires Roku, that looks good on paper and it looks good to shareholders and it really shores up the subscribers that Netflix is hemorrhaging. But I don't think it's actually good for Netflix on paper. Netflix doesn't need to be tied to devices. They don't need a physical device distribution medium. Roku needs Netflix more than Netflix needs Roku.
And we have a lot of Roku TVs out there. Those are very popular. Does Netflix then hobble other streaming services as it updates those operating systems?
Even if they don't hobble other streaming services, I think Netflix is thinking we will offer people the ability to like one-click subscribe to Netflix from this device. And that's how we'll, improve our share numbers or our subscriber numbers. And I don't see it happening.
But here's another thing to consider. Here's a playbook out of the satellite radio book. When we sell these TVs, we will give you a 1-year Netflix subscription for free, which we will bake into the price of the television. And then we will count you as a subscriber.
Yeah.
And our numbers will look a lot better.
Yeah. That kind of thing, I think, is exactly what Netflix has in mind. And it is 100% a move to make things look better for shareholders, but doesn't actually make the company more healthy.
Well, does having employees in the building make a company more healthy? A lot of people are saying yes, Elon Musk being the vanguard there.
That was really a stealth layoff. I don't think he cares.
Oh, I think he cares big time. But a lot of the other people, being those workers that we're talking about, are saying, I don't think so.
The idea of working in the office all day, every day, no thanks, say workers.
So we had the story about the Google engineer last week, and he was like, oh, I'm really good at AI, and you really need me? So no, I don't think I will do that. And they're like, oh, it turns out there's an exception for AI engineers. Who knew?
I'm going to work from my balcony, and here's how productive I am. Good luck. Like, yeah. I mean, if you're productive and you can get your stuff done and you can stay on top of things, that's great. Not everybody can do that.
One of the things that we've learned from doing all these news stories that I don't think I would have ever been exposed to otherwise is the juggernaut that is Roblox.
Yeah.
Roblox is huge. And now that I know about it, when I'm in line and I'm looking at the gift card center, it's like, oh my God, it's all Roblox.
Yeah.
Like this whole section is Roblox and 5 of them are sold out. It's huge. And you can tell that Mark Zuckerberg is looking at that as like, I want that. Do you think he's made an offer and they turned him down?
Yes, absolutely.
Wasn't somebody trying to buy it?
Several people have been trying to buy them.
It's a golden goose. You don't let that go for cheap. So what do?
Facebook's gaming brings Creta's user-generated games to its cloud platform. The Roblox meets Fortnite platform lets you build games with friends. So the idea here is that you can channel the world-building infinite well of energy that is in your Minecraft playing 12-year-old and turn that into something that other people can then experience. So if you've got, a million monkeys on a million typewriters, eventually one of them is going to turn out Shakespeare. That's kind of what's happening with 12-year-olds and the make your own game. So it's like, look at this game that I made. Let's all go play it. They'll come up with an interesting mechanic, blah, blah, blah. Facebook doesn't care. They're there to just make money. But also, you get a better experience because you're not experiencing that Nintendo sort of Breath of the Wild, whatever. You're experiencing, one 12-year-old is putting together a game that they can share with other 12-year-olds, and then it doesn't matter that there's a million different games and a million different mechanics. They're making money upwards, downwards, sideways, and diagonally.
And another thing we learned from Roblox is, in amongst all this, scandal about how much money Apple is taking and how much money Google is taking, Roblox is taking nearly all the money.
Yeah.
Not giving you much of anything back.
Yeah.
Now, as I understand it, Creta is already on the Epic Store. But Facebook's big innovation is they're going to put it in the browser. Yeah. You don't need the standalone installer anymore.
Which also solves their Apple problem. They're looking at what happened with Epic and Fortnite, and it's like,
Now, we learned that Google had the new Pixel phones, and one of them, watch out, it leaked. That was probably PR. And I wonder if this is just not a continuation of the PR.
50% chance. Someone says they bought a Pixel 7 Pro prototype on Facebook Marketplace. You just never know what you'll find. And that's because the Pixel 6 was such a train wreck disaster garbage fest.
Now, this was sold as a Pixel 6 with no box, but it is definitely not a Pixel 6. It is a Pixel 7.
It's probably a Pixel 6 and a new. It really astonishes me that Google has become so disconnected that they just, like, the other day I was doing something and like copy paste doesn't work sometimes. Like, depending on how you highlight things, it's like, you'd never want to copy that to the clipboard. Well, yeah, I do actually.
Well, moving to social media, and of course, the biggest story in social media for certainly this month and probably some months coming is Elon Musk and his acquisition of Twitter. Now, he did, we're going to compile a couple of stories because they get a story out of this every 2 days, if not every day. But he said, I don't know, I feel like I'm going to use the exit clause because you're not giving me what I want. And they were like, well, okay, you know what? We will give you what I want. But they're using a very nasty court tactic, which is to overwhelm you with information. Like, if you ever see a court case where they're just stacking box after box after box because it's like, oh, you want discovery? Take it all. Spend 5 years going through it. Yeah. But I think Musk probably has the infrastructure to go ahead and do this. I think he'll be able to figure it out.
In reversal, Twitter plans to comply with Musk's demands for data. They're in a bit of a battle here. So it's Musk wants the data to know the rate at which bots and bot activity happen on Twitter. And it's possible that he'll discover something that Twitter doesn't know. It's possible. Not likely. They probably know.
Now, they're going to give him the same level of telemetry and access that they give to the people who pay big money to them in order to get that to run their businesses on it.
Yep.
So, not going to give it to him forever, obviously, but presumably this gives him the ability to learn. You think that's right down to the bare numbers, or do they still massage that a little bit?
Well, they probably still massage it a little bit. It's like, here are the bots that we allow because they give us a lot of money. Here are the unpaid bots. Here's the third-party bots that we're keeping an eye on that do stuff, but we really just squelch all the stuff so that they're only talking to bots.
And of course, we live in a world where there is no subjective truth, right? I mean, or objective truth. There's just what Elon Musk says and what Agarwal says. And we have no way to confirm it or prove it or anything. You have to choose your side. And the Texas Attorney General has chosen a side.
Ken Paxton to investigate whether Twitter is understating the number of fake accounts on the platform. I guess the Texas Attorney General should look into this rather than, one of the people that deals with shareholders. Okay, I guess, maybe, possibly.
Twitter's not based in Texas. They do operate in Texas. I guess that gives you some power over that.
It's just weird.
Could this just be an election year thing?
Why is so much effort wasted on nonsense?
Because Twitter has an amazing amount of power, sadly. And so do attorney generals. But it seems, and this is a real head scratcher, that Twitter is not willing to play ball with government in some cases. And again, this is really weird because it seems like Twitter and the powers that be would be on the same side here. So what is it that Twitter is hiding in this situation? You got to wonder. Twitter would love to get rid of Donald Trump, right? They did. They have publicly
Deleted.
bashed Donald Trump. So why would you do something that might protect him? I think it's to keep from incriminating yourself.
Twitter is refusing to hand over its internal Slack messages to the January 6th House Committee, the report says. You dig into this, though, and it may be that they turned over what they had to the lawyers, and the lawyers are like, oh, I don't know if we should give them this. So,
But why?
Yeah, and so it's like, that's interesting.
I would like to read that. I think most of America would. And finally, TikTok. TikTok, of course, their big bone of contention, especially with governments around the world, is that their product might be just a smidge addictive, especially for kids. Seems like it's almost tailored to take advantage of the child's mind. So what do you do if you've got those accusations coming against you? You add more to the addiction.
Amid growing concerns around app addiction, TikTok rolls out more screen tools. So scroll down, you got to see the little thing. Let's get the weird art style that we should ask
Oh,
Krista
the
about.
Memphis. I hate it.
Yeah.
Don't you hate it?
Well, it's like, before you use TikTok, what do you want to get out of using TikTok? Be mindful of that. And then it's like, when you're using TikTok, be mindful of how much time. And then when you're done using TikTok, think about what you got out of it. Does it make sense? And then you can use the screen time thing to be like, you can only do this in 15-minute increments. And then you get a pop-up that's like, oh, you've hit your limit. I guess.
The answer to those three questions would be, number one, I'm trying to forget reality because reality is horrific and the world is spiraling downward. And then the number two, what was the number two question? During I'm using it, I'm only thinking about the cat videos. It's like, oh, look at the cats.
They're experiencing a level of joy that I will never be able.
And after, I'm thinking, oh, my problems are still here. They didn't go anywhere.
But I can think about the joy that the cats experienced and live vicariously.
And then I think, all right, let's go back to the cats. And that's the TikTok loop.
Well, that's it for today. We'll get a lot of nonsense coming up on Friday.
And robot in space.
And a sneeze.
That won't be on Friday. Well, maybe we'll have another one. Only one way to find out.
Tune in. It's Friday, June 17th. We've got lots of robot stories and kind of a lot of nonsense.
And space. Robot now also includes space, although we don't always say it. And this has sort of been a trend in the government lately. I don't know, maybe they think this is popular with the people, but they've never really given us anything.
No.
Perhaps NASA will be more forthcoming?
NASA is assembling a team to gather data on unidentifiable events in the sky. Some of the ones we've reported on turned out to be drone swarms. So it's terrestrial in origin.
Well, so they say.
Really,
also
really
could have been alien
performance.
drones.
Yeah, that's true.
You never know. But NASA's getting a relatively small budget.
I really want to know what happened with the patent examiner that got to go look at the propulsion drive that didn't have any like warped space or whatever. Because there's a patent that was awarded on that. The patent examiner was like, "No, this is impossible. We can't do this." And then it's like, "All right, we'll give you a demonstration." And then they're like, "All right, patent granted." What happened there? That's the real story.
You know, also I want to see a follow up. Remember, NASA was going to go and observe the spin launch thing that people say is impossible.
Oh yeah.
I wonder when that happens.
Yeah.
Got to be soon, right? Well, when it comes to autonomous driving, I suppose friends and enemies can change sides almost instantaneously, because after years of bitterness and lawsuits and scalping each other's workers, now it's time for friendship.
Waymo is teaming up with Uber on autonomous trucking because time really heals all wounds. You may remember that Uber hired somebody from Google that took some stuff on a USB drive they probably weren't supposed to take. So this was really surprising to everybody. Certainly the article author was very surprised by this move. But Uber has promised Waymo freight capacity on their trucks, and Waymo is going to evaluate Uber's technology, and Uber is going to evaluate Waymo's technology. So this is really strange, interesting move.
Now, we followed the Elizabeth Holmes saga quite a bit. She had a blood testing company, and it turned out that the magical AI blood testing wasn't actually doing anything. What they were doing is they were taking and using third-party labs to do regular blood testing and just burning venture capital that like twigs the entire time. So you would think that someone else who was doing the same kind of business would look at that and they'd say, we shouldn't do that. That will end badly. You'd be wrong.
AI shopping startup exaggerated tech capabilities to potential investors. So what this was you're on a website and you decided you wanted to buy something. If you had their extension installed, you would hit the button and it would just buy it. And it would figure out what the shopping checkout process was, and the app had your info and blah, blah, blah. Turns out they were just paying people in the Philippines to do that for you. Now, theoretically, the article doesn't say this, but theoretically, that's actually not a terrible way to build the AI to do that. It's just that you have to capture the information and all of the stuff that's going on from the humans doing that so that you can train the AI. Well, they weren't capturing it. And they also didn't tell investors that that's what they were doing.
And people in the Philippines were getting unrestricted access to your credit card number and your address and your personal information. Remembering that Philippines is a big target for the Chinese Communist Party's Belt and Road Initiative. And they might owe them some money real soon. Well, Korea, they had some regulatory additions. And like most regulations, it sounds good at first until you think about the unintended consequences. Because this regulation said that if you have a factory or business and you don't follow safety protocols and I get hurt, not only could you be, liable in terms of financial problems, you could go to prison. So unsurprisingly,
fearing lawsuits, factories rush to replace humans with robots in South Korea, foreshadowing what's about to happen in Amazon in the United States.
So yeah, they're like, why would you risk going to jail? Just get all the robots you can. There's a big shortage of robots in Korea right now because everybody's trying to do this.
In a year or two, there's some congressional hearing, and it's like, it says here that Amazon was the #1 source of rotator cuff injuries in all of America. Is that? And it's, oh yeah, no, we don't dispute that, but that's why we replaced everybody with robots.
Yeah, because robots, when they get a rotator cuff injury, you just replace them. They don't sue.
Straight to the oven with you.
Well, speaking of robots, this robot was at sea for quite some time. This was supposed to be the first fully automated trip around the globe. They were going to follow the same path as the Mayflower ship coming to America. It did not go off as planned.
Autonomous Mayflower reaches American shores a little north of the Mayflower in Canada.
Unfortunately, before that, it broke down on 2 separate occasions, had to be parked in a port, and someone had to fly in and do some really basic maintenance. You know, the kind of thing that you just have a ship mechanic for. But no, we can't have that here.
Because it's fully autonomous.
So there is going to be a job where you are alone, or like you and one other person on an autonomous boat for 6 months at sea. That's going to be crazy. Like Robinson Crusoe, except you're at sea.
Will you go insane? It's a psychological experiment.
And when it comes to overachieving robots, this one has to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
It was built to do how many flights?
It's like 3.
There was a very small number, and we're at what, 19 now?
Yeah, it's flown many kilometers.
And every time they think it's dead, it comes right back.
Ingenuity adapts for Mars winter operations. Long story short, this thing, it's getting cold there, and the Martian day is not long enough for this thing to charge its batteries to keep warm. So it's going to have some pretty severe thermal cycling over winter. And we don't know if it's going to come back in the spring because it depletes its batteries overnight just trying to stay warm.
We had already lost it for 2 days, and they thought maybe that's it. It's done so much more than we thought. It's still amazing if it did this, but then little beep started coming back. It powered back through it. It says, I'm ready to fly. Put me back in, coach.
My batteries are shot, but I'll try. Yeah.
And the space station is, it's scheduled to wind down. Some people say we need a brand new space station. Some people say, let's keep it going to 2030. What could go wrong? And based on this purchase, maybe the 2030 people are winning.
Yeah. NASA just bought the rest of the space station crew flights from SpaceX. I also, I was really surprised by the, well, not really surprised. This is maybe an engagement challenge for more of the people in the audience to keep up with all of the SpaceX news. So it's flights through 2030. That's fine. But this is also after, like, part of the reason I thought that NASA was waiting on this was they wanted to see what Boeing had. And so Boeing has completed a few of the flights, and this says that
They were successful.
And this says that NASA has purchased some Boeing flights as well. But does this imply that NASA was much happier with SpaceX's solution that they went ahead and bought everything through 2030?
Probably, yeah.
So I don't know. Engagement challenge. What's up with that?
There's probably the final, like, input is you actually pull the astronauts aside and you're like, okay, you got to pick one or the other. Which one was nicer?
Turns out SpaceX, apparently.
It's like, well, with SpaceX, you get the mint on the pillow. So
I wonder if there are any shareholders that are clued into that. It's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be giving Musk such a hard time because, well, NASA looked at it and they really liked it.
I think they're angry at him for other things at the moment. This is interesting because if you think about it, like, well, it is 3D printing, but it's not 3D printing like we've looked at all.
Yeah.
Now, previous weeks, they were doing the Chinese dam and they're like, oh, it's 3D printing. It's like, no, you're just extruding concrete.
We've been doing that for a while.
That's not a new thing. This is very much a new thing.
Yeah. New type of 3D printing uses sound waves to build up objects. So it's a resin printer, but it uses sound to create little bubbles of vibration that are like 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But they're super, super tiny. But it's possible that, yeah, you could inject some resin into somebody's muscle, and then the sound wave thing would harden the resin selectively inside your muscle to build up whatever it was that you needed.
Or it doesn't have to be the human body. That's actually one of the more complicated ways of doing it. It could be, the other example they gave was, for example, inside a transmission or an aircraft part or a turbine. Maybe you could reprint internal pieces without ever having to take anything apart.
That'd be neat.
Just fill it up with substrate, print, and then drain. You're good to go. I don't know what was proven here. I mean, did we really need an experiment?
No.
This has already happened accidentally several times. We know what happens when you expose anything to 4chan.
AI trained on 4chan becomes quote-unquote hate speech machine. But will 4chan be introspective about this? I think the answer is no.
I don't think they're capable of that.
Were they NPCs as defined by not having any inner monologue?
What do you think the percentage of no inner monologue is among 4chan users?
I don't know if it's going to be much higher or much lower than average, but I couldn't tell you which.
I don't think I would know either. That'd be a great experiment to do. But isn't that all self-reporting?
Yeah.
I don't think we trust that ever.
Yeah.
Some people have a theory that everybody has it, just some people don't understand the question. Although they did have that eye experiment. Remember that?
Yeah.
Like your eye moves a certain way, and some people didn't have that.
Yeah.
Well, here's a tragic story because now imagine you just went out and bought a brand new car. And I mean, oh, you love it. You're keeping it super clean and shiny. And then you're like, oh, I got to protect the clear coat. And then you come out of the store one day and there's just a giant ding on the side of it.
What happened?
Imagine scaling that feeling by about 1 billion.
NASA's new powerful space telescope gets a larger than expected micrometeoroid. Space agency says the telescope should still perform great science. They didn't tell us how big it was. It's bigger than 0.1 millimeters, but it's not much bigger than that.
It's big enough that it will cause distortion in the images, and they will have to work around that with software.
Barely perceptible distortion. It's a ding. At least it's not a hole in the mirror. It's a ding in the mirror.
It's been less than a month. How many more times is this going to happen? How many of these can we take and deal with?
Apparently they planned for, 0.1 millimeter micrometeoroids, but this one was bigger than expected, so.
And that happened real quickly in the lifespan.
Yeah.
I added this, we're getting to the nonsense section. I added this just it's not really a nonsense story, but it's so hopeful.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. Although I do think this will also lead to water wars.
Yeah.
Like that's a big culling strategy. I'm not saying it's good. It's awful. It's horrific, but it does keep the population down a little bit. And if we get rid of it, it's going to be weird.
New York City cancer trial delivers an unheard of result. Complete remission for everybody. Now the sample size is only
12.
Or 12. Well, was it? Yeah.
The original story was 18. This story was 12.
Okay. It was a particular kind of colorectal cancer. So they took the drug. The 12 people that took the drug, all of it eliminated the cancer.
Rectal cancer with a mutation, and that had not spread at all yet. very early rectal cancer. So this is a small sliver of cancer patients, but still,
That's incredible.
I mean, maybe we can work from this, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we can also work from this, but once again, just like was it Saudi Arabia or the UAE that was doing the anti-aging?
Oh, this is the same line of science. So the earlier version of this that we reported on, where they got mega cancer, this is version 2.0 of that same.
Well, this is the science that Middle Eastern country was looking at and saying, yes, let's put $1 billion a year toward this.
Yes, yeah. The Benjamin Button effect. Scientists can reverse aging in mice. The goal is to do the same for humans. Scroll up.
Look at him.
So it's a little bit cerebrospinal fluid and a little bit gene control. They engineered a virus to activate 3 genes that are dormant and then gave the mice antibiotics to activate the virus. But they injected the virus directly in the tissues that they wanted to regenerate. And so far, it seems like they've been successful. I mean, look at the pictures of the mice. It's pretty crazy. Once your immune system clears the virus, you resume aging, and that seems to eliminate the whole cancer problem. And it also says that whatever is going on here is stimulating your body to do its own thing, that they're not really doing anything super crazy. They're really just reverting the state of an individual cell to an earlier state when it was more functional, which is perhaps promising.
I think I would probably put that in the crazy column. Sounds a little bit like, against nature to me, but
they said it was like a gecko. It's like, did you know you can regrow your own arm? We just need to spray this stuff on it, and then you're good to go.
I mean, if it really were a reversal, then what's the risk, right? You get to whatever age that you wake up and you're like, I don't like this anymore.
Did they ever try to cut Deadpool in half to see if we got 2 Deadpools?
I'm sure somebody tried. How could that not have happened at some point? Well, one thing about 2022 is that you really have to be careful because it's hard to define certain things. In fact, defining certain things can get you in a lot of trouble. And the California government is certainly one of the big vanguards when it comes to throwing away definitions. In this case, I don't know if this is necessarily a bad thing.
Reuters reports that bees are quote-unquote fish under California Endangered Species Act, according to the state court. I went down the rabbit hole on this to find out if it was as insane as it seems on the surface. And the act actually refers to fish and some other stuff and also invertebrates. And so, I mean, technically a bee is an invertebrate.
What about a tardigrade?
We don't have any way of measuring them or knowing if they're in danger.
Let's assume they are. But this is all about, we got to protect the bees, and they already have laws in place to protect certain things like fish. So they're trying to apply that law to save the bees. And some people are like, no, that's not going to work. That's for fish. Officially, bees are fish.
Yeah, there was a company here that was kind of fighting against this. It's like, no, we don't need to worry about the bees.
Does that mean if I'm a pescatarian, I can eat bees?
Maybe.
I added this because I remember you mentioned recently that you had gotten back into it.
Yeah, I like it because it's really dark and it's probably exactly what's going to happen to humanity.
Except it's not anything now. Because once again, the streaming world has taken something that you like and ended it.
HBO Max canceled Raised by Wolves after 2 seasons. Season 2 made its debut in February. Like, season 1 was basically a self-contained story, and then season 2 is like, oh, okay, everything makes sense now. And I really kind of wonder where Ridley Scott was ultimately going to go with it. But season 2 season 2 explained a lot to you at the end that was kind of obvious. And so I kind of see where they're going with it now. But
was he writing it though? He directed the first 2, but then after that, he didn't even direct it.
I don't know.
I don't think he was writing it.
It'd be nice to know where he had planned to go with the story if he would say that. But the great thing about Ridley Scott is that he doesn't really fill in a lot of the details. And that's what makes his story so good.
I got through, I think, maybe 4 or 5 episodes of that, but I couldn't keep up with it. I didn't like it.
It's almost the entire first season is world building, and then the second season really gets into the meat and potatoes.
I really disliked the characters. That was
that's part of it. Like, I don't really care. I don't like the children. I don't like the robots. I don't like anything. But then you get into the second season, and you get to see a lot more of like the devout evangelical archetypes, and that's a lot better. Interesting. It's interesting stuff.
The white cloaks. This is a story we see over and over. People commit crimes and they go on social media and They announced those crimes as a sort of a clout building thing, I guess. And then, of course, they get arrested for said crimes.
Houston man raps about robbing ATMs on YouTube and is later arrested after allegedly robbing an ATM.
They refer to, he calls himself the jug god. Did you know what jugging was?
No.
Jugging is where someone identifies you doing something that they think means you now have an item they want or money. Like if they see you at an ATM, for example, or going into a bank, then they follow you home and home invasion you in order to get, I don't know why that's called jugging. Maybe you have a jug of liquid so you can like drink it while you're waiting and watching. He won't be doing any more jugging. Actually, he will, because he'll be out in like 2 weeks, because that's how it works now.
Around here, if you jugged somebody, you would just be shot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big city kind of deal.
Yeah.
You don't want to jug anywhere in Kentucky. I wouldn't recommend it. And this is a follow-up to a story, and I am astonished this went the way that it did. This is just like...
It's Geico's own fault, though. It's really kind of funny.
How could we live in a world where this is the rule? Even if you screw up, if you're Geico and do some stupid contract thing, it's just like, this is ridiculous.
Geico to pay $5.2 million to a woman who says she caught STDs in her former partner's car. How could this happen? Is this probably under the law? This would never happen. But Geico, in their insurance name, they have mandatory forced arbitration. And the arbitrator strictly read the terms of the contract and said, yeah, if you contract an STD in the car that is insured by Geico, Geico is obliged to pay out under that policy. And then Geico said, wait, what? No, we want a fair trial. We want to take this to court. We want to do litigation. And the judges said, no, you had a binding arbitration. Contract. You can't.
I bet Geico will be switching arbitration companies.
Yeah.
She got HPV. Of course, there's no cure for that. So 5.2 million was her number, and she got it.
That's amazing.
You know, HPV doesn't really have a lot of symptoms, right? I think I'd take HPV for $5 million. Anybody want to make that offer? This was a terrible story, or a fun story. But then you think about, like, I'm sure that they probably threw that chocolate away.
Yeah.
But it being waist deep means that there were definitely genitals in the chocolate.
2 people stuck in a tank of chocolate in central PA M&M factory. I actually thought at first this story was related because like Mr. Beast did a video recently where he sold a chocolate. He did like a Willy Wonka thing that had a chocolate river. And I thought this was somehow related to that, to talk about the simulation reusing variables.
Not a lot of details in that story. We don't know exactly how they got down in there, just that they were okay, but they couldn't get out.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have an emergency rope ladder somewhere in the chocolate plant? I bet you will next week.
There's a hiring manager somewhere. It's like, I want to also know, were they veteran employees or were they the employees that HR hired because literally nobody else has applied?
And they didn't know enough not to get down in the tanks?
Yeah.
Why were they in the tanks in the first place?
Yeah.
What were they trying to get out of the tank?
It's a bit like Walmart relaxing its drug policy because there's just literally nobody else to hire.
And one of the things that might be keeping people from jobs is the gas price. Oh boy, it's going up. I also saw that we're getting record trucker bankruptcies and resignations because of the diesel price. That's going to be a shock to the supply chain again.
Yeah, but see, it doesn't make sense that the truckers are being squeezed in a lot of cases. We have several truckers in our audience, and the shippers are increasing, but they're not passing that on to the truckers, which seems like the dumbest thing ever.
Because they want the truckers to be in the fleets that they control,
right? Where
you do get compensated for that, but you make a set amount of money. You can't be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all just to get the independent truckers out of the equation.
Yeah, and this is a perfect, never let a crisis go to waste. Yeah. How do we have a federal government that is so ineffective that they don't look at that and say, well, these independent trucker operators are being abused systematically? It seems like we would need some kind of law enforcement intervention there, because that...
You know damn well. But
it's so dumb. It's so dumb. How do we band together as citizens to work to help the truckers?
Oh, don't say that. That's terrorism. Banding together as citizens? What are you talking about? But it doesn't just affect the truckers. It also affects some of the public servants who are paid by that very same government.
As gas prices surge, Michigan sheriff asked deputies to manage some dispatch calls by phone. It's like, you don't need to drive there. It's probably fine. Which is slightly horrifying.
If you're calling the cops over something that can be handled by the phone, you're calling the cops too much. You don't need to call the cops for whatever that was.
There's a cat stuck in a tree. Well, I'm not coming out there for that, man. Have you seen gas prices?
They're going to start charging like a fuel surcharge to come out.
Oh.
It'll be like, you know, if it's something bad like a rape, it's only $1.50. But if it's a waste of time like a cat in a tree, $10.
Was that one of the things in like Brave New World or one of those other dystopian things where it's like you have to pay the police to show up? It's microtransactions.
Well, I mean, Rome.
That was with the fire department. That's how the Carnegies got their wealth.
Yeah.
Or so it goes.
And one thing about, you know, as the world goes crazy, more and more of these crazy people are getting into leadership. Now, of course, we already had crazy people in leadership, but they were the kind of crazy people who were good at hiding it. For example, a Barack Obama, totally corrupt, totally horrible, but really a nice package, right?
What we need to do is rein in the NSA. And then as soon as he's elected, I said, what now?
Yeah. Easy to like, but horrible. Now juxtapose that with a Donald Trump. Hard to like. Very hard to like.
Probably also corrupt, but in different ways.
Sure, absolutely. But, you know, just basically two sides of the same coin. However, now we're getting this new breed where they are just completely insane. Like the Magic the Gathering, what's her name? Marjorie.
Yeah, literally, like, there's something very wrong.
Yeah, and something wrong here as well, because when there's a microphone in front of you, there's certain words that just have to get caught in the filter. They have to.
Palladino is saying that word that I can't say because this is YouTube is the kind of leader that we need was a mistake. You can read that on the screen. This is Buffalo, New York. It's like, you know, maybe I probably shouldn't have said that. He's a Republican running for Congress in Western New York, and people will probably like that he said that, which is even more insane.
Oh, I think that's probably a death sentence, right? There's no way he's getting elected after that. You can't invoke that now.
I don't know. In this world that we live in now, up is down, war is peace, freedom is slavery. I don't even know.
You use that word. I mean, a lot of politicians use it, but you use it to describe your enemies, not what you're aspiring toward. That's the mistake that he made.
But he was such a strong leader, and he just got stuff done. That's.
And I think in a very similar vein, but calling back to what you were talking about with like Walmart, like, well, okay, maybe we will start hiring people who are on meth. Because we don't have any other choice. No one else is willing to do the work.
Police officer fired for getting pure and evil tattooed on his hands. He was very, very adamant about pointing out, it's like, no, my hands don't say pure evil. It's pure and evil. They don't go together, even though the other tattoo makes them look like they're the same.
So you think he does pure acts with his right hand and evil acts with his left hand?
Or maybe it's like good and evil?
I think that's a lie.
Yeah.
So he has been fired, but he is suing to get his job back.
He was not willing to remove the tattoos because it cost too much, which I think actually will sink his case against the department. He's like, okay, I'll get rid of them, but it costs too much versus I don't want to get rid of them because that's my free speech. I think he just lost his case.
Technically, you don't really need to do 2 fingers, right?
Yeah.
Then it wouldn't be pure evil anymore.
What about evil and Knievel? Oh, Knievel's too many letters. He'd need a mutation.
You have to double down. It wouldn't be very readable. And if you lose your dog, that's sad. But maybe when you lose your dog, if you're super lucky, you get a celebrity encounter from it.
Family Guy skit. Thanks, Hillary Swank. New York woman finds a lost. I don't know how to say that kind of breed.
Dachshund or Dachshund, I think is how it's
Dotson. Is it Dotson?
That's a car.
I don't know. In Hillary Swank's lap.
She's only got 1 L.
So they were shooting a movie. This person lost her dog, just, you know, random person. And they were shooting a movie, and it turns out Hillary Swank found it.
She turns out to be a big rescuer of animals and so forth. And
But the dog somehow knew she was a dog person.
It saw her aura. The dog was like, holy crap, that's the $1 million baby. I got to go see her.
Isn't that what Gwyneth Paltrow is always saying? It's like, oh, this is the...
I bet Gwyneth Paltrow's aura is terrible. And in India, they have an interesting world where it's, you know, new meets old. you've got the new laws that say that you can work wherever you want, but that caste system is hanging on. You better not try to marry anybody outside of your caste. And it also goes with the other aspects of marriage. They expect women to be in the kitchen and the bedroom, but also now maybe have a career. So if you're a busy young lady, you still have to cook and clean. What do?
A man in India divorced his wife for cooking him instant noodles every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, a judge says. The judge was okay with it. It's like, you know what? It's not going to work out between you two. You go right ahead. This is news because culturally, all the reasons you described.
Yeah. Yeah, they're in a weird spot over there. Traditional and the new world's just kicking in. I guess we went through that, right?
I was talking to somebody that was in the, they're in one of the FANG companies, and they've been there a while. They've been doing pretty well, but they were surprised how much the Indian caste system is a thing in their company. I mean, they have offices there, obviously, but some of them come over to America, and they're like, they're basically implementing the caste system here in America, and it's weird because we can't point it out, and when we try to have meetings about it, it goes sideways. So that they're struggling a little bit with their internal corporate culture. Yeah,
you're allowed to work wherever you want, but it still comes up, and it seems like you talk to the individuals, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we've moved beyond that." Oh, would you touch what are the untouchables called? It starts with a D. It's like, oh, would you touch one of them? No, no, I would never. Those people touch corpses.
Would you consider them for a promotion inside this American company? They've got their citizenship. No, I don't think so.
That would require touching.
That's a little disturbing. Yeah.
It's a weird system. Also, do you know that the very top, the Brahmin, that's what you want to be born into, right? But here's the catch. You can't eat meat. If they catch you eating meat and you're a Brahmin, they will kill you. I think I'd rather be the next one down, the warrior class, just so I think they're allowed to eat meat. Here, this is not, this is just a weird story, but this introduces a moral quandary, right? Is this the right thing to do? It seems like everybody is happy, but is it taking advantage?
The man prays for taking terminally ill friend's virginity. She was dying, and he was 31.
She had cancer that had recurred, and she said, "You know what? I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing chemo and surgery again. Let's just let the clock run out on this." And then she revealed to him that she was a virgin, and I guess the conversation went from there. He said it was a very emotional experience, but a very good experience.
It went viral. Yeah, so I don't know.
Most people seem to think that he was a bit of a hero in that situation.
Sometimes you have to take one for the team.
Well, we don't know what she looked like. How attractive is she?
Yeah.
And this is interesting not because of what it is. These gotcha headlines, and who cares really? But the amazing thing here is that contractors and construction companies,
architects,
are now considering this.
Yeah,
like, this is a thing where they're like, "Oh, you're going to run into trouble here. Let me save you some
preemptively.
Let me save you some headaches."
Yeah. Parent finds urinal in girl's bathroom in public middle school and loses her mind. As I was reading the quotes and stuff from this, I was imagining Kyle's mom from South Park. What?
So yeah, they talked to the school, and the school's like, "Yeah, well, we just recently built that bathroom, and the contractor, they showed us all this information, and we were like, you know what, that makes sense."
It's like, we don't really have any idea what's going on with that. We're just going to do that because we want to be better than we were in the 70s and the 1800s and the turn. Like, that's all we're trying to do is we're just trying to be better, but we don't know what that means.
And you really do have to take a step back and be like, okay, as long as it doesn't affect me, why should I care? And how does that affect anybody?
Although I might have opted for just more toilets, because they said that everything is a private stall. And one of the advantages with a urinal is that you get more usable facilities per unit, per square foot. But if everything's going to be a private stall, just go for the toilet.
Probably if you're the janitor, you don't feel that way.
Yeah, that's true. Because people are terrible.
A lot different cleaning experience.
I'm a lot more considerate when, it doesn't, the public restroom always leaves in a better state when I leave than when I found it. So I get that, though.
The hero we need.
I mean, that should be like, there should be a classroom bathroom in, probably grade school or, middle school, whatever, this is how you use a shared toilet. And if you don't do that, there's like rulers on the knuckles and just really severe punishment.
The problem is there's no way to enforce it after that.
Yeah.
You can't watch the bathroom closely enough without stepping on everybody else's privacy to figure out who's doing it.
Yeah.
I guess you could do like, that would still be very expensive.
One person at a time, and then when they leave, you have like the pre and the post state.
But now you have a staff that has to do how many times a day? Plus a busy bathroom is no way you can do one person at a time.
Listen, if that's what's required to improve society, I'm willing to put tax dollars toward that. It can't be any worse than Raytheon or Palantir.
You're not in charge.
I just think we'd be better as a society. Like the level of programming that would happen, I think it's doable.
Take some of the money that's being given to clear scams where it comes to transgender, right? Clearly, there are some scam organizations who are just stealing money when it comes to that kind of thing. Put it toward the bathrooms. I'm for that.
Yeah.
Affects everybody, but it affects them more than others. So it's going to be good for them, right?
I haven't been to Buc-ee's yet, but I have a feeling when I go in and it's immaculate, it's going to be like, oh, there's hope for society. When really it's just a hardworking janitor.
Go over and just give a warm hug to the bathroom attendant. You're doing God's work. This is a depressing story, made even more depressing by this woman's role.
Yeah. 30 animals found dead in animal rescue CEO's South Carolina home. She was not very good at her job.
Also, the way these animals died, caged, and they died of dehydration. She just left them caged in her house. There was no description as to why. Why would you do this?
She just got busy, which is perhaps sort of the worst.
She didn't hear the whimpering and the screaming. It was like, what, 30 dogs and 2 cats or something like that?
Yeah.
28 dogs and 2 cats. 30 total. Yeah. Wow. I just can't imagine. I think dying of dehydration is one of the worst probably ways to go, right? Right now, there's a mouse in my garage, and I've got one of those, like humane traps down, and I make damn sure to check that every day. Because if he ever gets in there, I'm smashing him with a pry bar. I'm not going to let him go of dehydration. That would be horrible. I mean, he has to die, but he doesn't have to die like that.
We have a mouse downstairs that is large enough to carry a Girl Scout cookies box.
Wow.
And it has not so far set off the traps. It's very impressive.
Is that a testament to the strength of that rat or the shrinkflation of Girl Scout cookies?
Probably a little of both.
Well, water is becoming a big issue out west. A big issue. And
Unless
not a lot is helping so far. I don't think they're expecting any big rains coming up. And you have to ask yourself, like, well, what are we doing with the water that we have? It might make you angry.
Sacramento approves sale of up to 3 billion gallons of water after declaring water alert. Everybody help us save water. Oh, we've got a water surplus. Let's sell it. That would make me angry.
It's one of those things that municipal governments can do to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And probably shouldn't be that way because it's not their water. It's everybody's water.
Yeah. Can you bank the water? Is there some sort of water fund where you could invest that water and then maybe collect it later when there's less water in Sacramento?
Well, yeah, just don't pump it.
Leave it in the ground.
It's not going anywhere.
Perhaps we can come up with some sort of storage system. We shall call it a reservoir.
No, I think they just want money. And apparently they're having some airport problems over in the UK.
Yes.
And
we're having some airport problems here as well because people have returned to travel rather quickly.
It seems like, from what I'm reading here, that most of the problems stem from the Orwellian controls that we've added to airline travel. Like people are in lines to get checked, and there's the Great Resignation. So those people are not working, and the ones that are bad at their jobs.
Yes.
And they're not motivated. So the solution is to get rid of regulation. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's not that at all. It's to bring in more government.
Ryanair suggests bringing in an army of clerks and bureaucrats to end airport travel chaos.
No, not an army of clerks, a literal army. He wants the military doing this.
He wants the army to be the clerks and bureaucrats.
We have the posse comitatus, right? Do they have that?
I don't know.
A lot of people say that's a bad idea. I would tend to agree, I think.
There's a lot of canceled flights, and I think the airline industry is going to try to make up for lost profits by making sure that there's no flights available, and then overcharging. So, well, if you really want to go to Dallas, it's going to cost you an extra $4,000.
It's not looking good. Future's not looking good. Last week we had someone who attacked the Mona Lisa. Luckily, the Mona Lisa is protected by a thick piece of bulletproof glass, so nothing bad happened. Just had a fun little headline. That was not quite the story in Dallas.
Very sad. A $5 million in ancient art at a Dallas Museum of Art has been destroyed by a man, quote unquote, mad at his girl, police say. He's probably going to go to prison for a very long time. Probably longer than the people that stole more than that monetary value in pensions, CEOs and whatever.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think he will get a surprisingly small amount of time for this. So he had an argument with his girlfriend. His girlfriend has nothing to do with the museum or this art or anything. He was just angry and wanted to smash. So he smashed these 4 items, which are irreplaceable. And now they're smashed.
Depressing.
Ancient art. Should be the death sentence. That level of just not caring about the world around you. Why would we ever need that human?
But also, the museum probably should have had better security if it was worth $5 million for those things. Like, is it just a plexiglass case? Was that all on a pedestal? Like, was it not bolted into the floor?
They were in glass already, and apparently smashing glass is what he wanted to do. I don't know that he even targeted the art. He just wanted to smash something that was made of glass or that would smash.
Now, I seem to remember watching a robbery of like an eyeglass store, and some of the cases had unsmashable glass for the eyeglass frames that had diamonds and stuff in them.
Yeah, that would probably be a good upgrade.
It's probably not more than $5 million.
They said he walked past other art installations that didn't have glass and didn't care. He just wanted to smash.
Sad.
Do you understand the Morbius memes?
It's Morbin time.
The Morbius memes are so everywhere. Is it possible? I think we already talked about this when we discussed this the first time. Is it possible that Sony was behind all of this?
Maybe.
It seems a little bit too grassroots, I guess.
How do you do? It's like, hello, sir. I know your profile from 4chan. I would like to pay you money in order to do this. It's like, oh, okay.
4chan influence wrangler. There's a tough job, huh?
Morbius is so bad that it's coming back to theaters. No, really. They're re-releasing it because Sony was like, I don't understand. It's so popular with influencers. Why didn't it do well? Let's re-release it.
I didn't understand.
Still did badly.
Before I read the story, I didn't understand this was part of the Spider-Man universe.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really bad.
Okay, you know what though? Maybe it works a little bit because now I'm so curious. I'm like, maybe I should watch that. Not in a theater. Certainly not in a theater, but
Sony will never be aware of anything that has taken place with that intellectual property.
It's weird. Wonder if they'll do a sequel.
No.
We have this weird thing with a lot of our government groups. You get to be part of a council, a bunch of countries join together and they rotate the leadership of the council. So at some point you get to be the leader. Everybody gets a choice. And that's how we ended up with, was it Dubai that was in charge of women's rights for a while? It was Dubai or the UAE or one of those countries, which has a decidedly bad record for that kind of thing. And certainly the same thing played out here.
North Korea has assumed leadership of the top disarmament group in the United Nations.
They tested a rocket, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, something. It was, it's like, oh, we can hit the American mainland. And it's like,
Now, I'm a big believer that the U.S. should have no ability to be like, we can do this, but you can't. I mean, that's the kind of, our leaders have that mentality, and they should not. I understand North Korea is a bit of a threat, but who are we? Who are we to say that? And one of your mom's cat is famous for its possum encounters. We definitely had possums eating out of our cat food at my house.
Missing part of its nose.
Growing up. We also had a cat get its nose bitten off by a possum. This is a pretty common thing for us and apparently also in Alaska.
Woman is NYC bar hero after calmly grabbing and removing a possum that wandered inside. She grabbed it correctly. That is the safest way to grab a possum
By the scruff.
to not get bit. And it's not happy about that. But once you throw it down, it'll scurry away. It won't seek revenge.
To be fair, possums, I've never seen a possum look happy. They have a very angry face.
I have seen a possum look happy one time. It was the picture of the possum that got into the bakery and ate all the jelly-filled donuts.
I thought that was a raccoon.
Was it a raccoon? I don't think well, maybe. In my mind, I've mentally replaced it with a possum that it can't breathe and it's just laying there in the corner like, kill me.
Yeah.
I've made a mistake.
There was also that puppy that got into the jelly and it was just covered with jelly. And San Diego, boy, San Francisco, San Diego, Philadelphia, they've all got these massive, massive open air drug communities now. And it's crazy because when you walk down the street, they'll film the street and it's just nothing but it's like right now my yard, or well, not yet, but in the fall, my yard will be mostly pine needles. In these places, it's just regular needles. And so
California, you okay? You doing okay? Is everything all right?
it creates risks that you would not consider.
Dog tests positive for drugs after neighborhood walk in San Diego. So this guy took his dog for a walk, and then on going home, his dog was acting really weird. So he took him to the vet. The vet did a pee test, and it turns out this dog had meth, amphetamine, and amphetamines. Tested positive for both. So they sedated the dog because they didn't know what else to do. And
36 hours.
And they're testing its liver may have been damaged.
The good news is that this guy posted about it to social media. Obviously, that's what you do now. And he got a ton of replies of other people who were like, oh, that happened to my dog. He'll be fine. Because it seems to happen a lot. I love this, like his little eyes. It's like, oh, I'm so high, dude. Dude, I messed up.
I wonder if he'll have, seeking behavior now. It's like, oh, I need to find.
He's just scratching at the door all day, trying to get his next fix.
It's not good.
I watched a lot of those. Soft White Underbelly is a great channel that he interviews those people. And a lot of them have dogs. You got to wonder what that dog's life is like. Is that better than being in a shelter? It probably is.
Yeah. Certainly better than the South Carolina woman's shelter.
That's true. Not dehydrating in a cage. Anything's better than that.
That's all we got for this week. Krista will be back next week. Woo!
And you should as well.
Yeah. Exciting times. All right. We'll see you later.